Hi there everybody, it's Jenelle Kent again from Pieces to Treasure, and I'm here to talk to you today about cutting up toweling. Now if we just have a quick look at the quilt behind me, that's my Starstruck quilt, and you can see the squares here that have been cut from the toweling. There's 4 of them in each block. You can see there's a grey and white one over here. And this one here has some of the aqua and navy. Now, what you notice about the squares is that in each square, the stripes are matching. All the stripes in each block are in exactly the same position. Now, just imagine this quilt, if you will, for a minute. If the stripes hadn't been carefully cut like this. See how we get that slight optical illusion of a cross going underneath the patch centre star? If these stripes had not been fussy cut or cut exactly the same, you wouldn't get that effect and the quilt wouldn't look very good at all. Now, if we look over here at this cushion, this gather cushion also has the stripe running exactly through the centre. So the centre of this stripe is equidistant from either end of the cushion. That's a little farmhouse pillow from my book Farmhouse Fresh. And up here is a handbag, exactly the same story. The stripe is exactly in the middle of the bag. Now I could go on showing you examples of this all day. Here's another pillow. Once again, it's from Farmhouse Fresh, and the stripe is exactly cut in the middle. So the question is, how do we make sure that when we cut our stripes, we get this effect, if that is what the pattern calls for? Now, I'm talking to you today about toweling because that's my superpower. Toweling is what I design and it's what I love to use, but I'm a bit of a fan of stripes. You probably know that already. Here's just a standard woven stripe off the bolt, regular cotton patchwork fabric. Now, the information I'm going to give you about cutting stripes today, you can use for cutting stripes just like this. It's not confined just to toweling. You can extend it to other fabrics where this is going to work. So, let's cut some stuff up. This is where the fun starts. Now, looking at the quilt behind me, we're going to concentrate on this square here. Now, we've got this piece of toweling that is the one that stripe is cut from. Now, I happen to know that the pattern behind me, Starstruck, the measurement for this square is a 6.5 inch square. Now, we want the stripe exactly in the centre of our 6.5 inch square. So I grab my ruler and I have a look at my stripe. There is the centre of this stripe. So I have to cut a 6.5 inch square. So I say to myself, what is half of 6.5? And the answer is 3.25. So I look at my ruler and I come across to the 3.25 inch line, and I'm going to run that 3.25 inch line right down the centre of my woven stripe on my toweling. So my 3.25 line on my ruler runs down the centre of the woven stripe on my toweling. Now we're also going to double check this. I'm going to look at my ruler, making a 6.5 inch square, and I note I've got 1.75 inches on this side of my stripe, and I've got 1.75 inches on that side of my stripe. So I'm in the right place. Grab my cutter, nice sharp cutter, cut off one side. I'm going to flip this around and now use my ruler, measuring 6.5 from this edge, because my ruler is 6.5 inches wide, checking that my 3 1/4 inch line is running down the center of my stripe, cut that off. Now I've got a piece where the stripe is right in the middle. Then I just have to cut my squares. Cut the end off, turn it around, use my 6 1/2 inch ruler to cut off. Now, when I'm cutting this way, I like to put a horizontal on my ruler on my stripe so I know my sides are exactly perpendicular. Cut off my 6 1/2 inch square, and I'm going to do another one for good measure. 6 1/2 inch square. There they go. So when this is pieced into this quilt, the corners have triangles on them. We have our stripe exactly in the center, and the 2 squares, if I put them one on top of the other, the stripes line up exactly. So that's how you center your stripe when you're cutting out. What if the piece we need with the stripe centered in it is bigger than something like a 6 or an 8 1/2 inch square? Something like this bag here, or the pillow. Well, let's cut the front side of this bag here, this tote, out of this piece of toweling. Now, the first thing you would do is cut the length you need. And I've cut my length 16 1/2 inches. So this width for this piece of fabric needs to be 12 1/2 inches. Now, half of 12 1/2 is 6 1/4. So we're going to find the 6 1/4 inch line on our ruler and run that down the center of the stripe. So that's our 6 1/4 inch line. I know it's hard to see red on red. You're going to have to trust me on this one. And the other thing I note when I do this is the dotted line here, which is at 5 1/2 inches, is sitting just on the edge of this narrow red stripe. So when I flip it over, I'll make sure I have that in exactly the same space on the other side, and then I know I'm in the center. So I'm going to cut that off like that. So effectively, we've measured 6 1/4 inches out from the center. So once again, I've got my 6 1/4 inch mark right in the center of our stripe, and I just tweak this up so it's straight, and I've got my 5 1/2 inch line running down the inside of that narrow stripe like I did before. Cut it off, and now I have a piece of fabric ready to make the bag with the stripe exactly in the center. So that's how we center our stripes when we're using striped fabric or we're using toweling and you're making a project that requires the stripe to be centered in the middle. Worth taking just that little bit of extra time to cut things up correctly. So happy sewing, happy cutting, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching.